Last week, we left off on a note that suggests that the bulk of the external borrowings done by African countries come at a term described as high risk due to the nature of these economies, of course, which is why they eventually default. Already, Nigeria has made a provision for 13.08 trillion naira as budget deficit in the 2025 budget. But then we return to our review for the year 2024, and the issues on our plate this week, of course, involves the international relationship and trade, climate change, the environment, of course, inclusion, social justice, critical infrastructure, particularly power, and you know all the reasons why. And so the bottom line is, how are policies around these areas affecting you? We'll be answering those questions in a moment. My name is Leah Katung-Babatunde, and of course, we go to the trends table, and we'll be back shortly.
President Bola Tinubu has said that he is ready to make concessions to address the controversies surrounding the tax bills before the National Assembly. Speaking during his first presidential media chat, the president, while speaking on the contentious VAT components of the bill, said tax amendments require negotiations and concessions, and he was open to such. The 4 tax reform bills drafted by the Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms and Fiscal Policy aim to overhaul the existing tax laws in Nigeria. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has phased out high-interest foreign exchange FX swaps to stabilize financial markets and has so far settled 80% of FX forward obligations, thereby boosting liquidity and market confidence. CBN's Deputy Governor Economic Policy, Mohammed Sani Abdullahi, made the disclosure in a presentation titled Enhancing FX Market Efficiency at a meeting of the Economic Management Team convened by the federal government to assess critical economic policies and progress in key sectors. He said the bank has also maintained robust external reserves to support exchange rate appreciation. Access Holdings has become the first bank to complete its recapitalization as it recorded a total subscription of 371.8 billion naira on its rights issues. The bank is, however, constrained to raising 351 billion naira, the intended amount, according to a corporate disclosure on the NGX website. The newly issued 17.773 billion shares will be allocated to shareholders not later than January 10, 2025. The funds raised will boost Access Holdings' paid-up share capital to approximately 602.8 billion naira, positioning it as the first bank to complete its 500 billion naira recapitalization mandated by the CBN. The United Nations General Assembly this week adopted the Convention Against Cybercrime, a landmark global treaty aimed at strengthening international cooperation to combat cybercrime and protecting societies from digital threats. The UN, the statement, revealed that the agreement on the legally binding treaty marked the culmination of a 5-year effort by UN member states with inputs from civil society, information security experts, academia, and the private sector. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres welcomed the adoption of the convention, the first international criminal justice treaty to have been negotiated in over 20 years.
Last week, President Bola Tinubu laid before a joint session of the National Assembly the 2025 proposed budget. And of course, we already know those provisions already, with the security aspect of that budget taking the large chunk of allocations. But then before that time, we had the National Bureau of Statistics bring out that report on security and crime, and particularly the most disturbing one is the kidnapping ransom being paid to the tune of 2.23 trillion naira in the year 2023 into 2024. So here are some expert views in previous sessions of the program.
These politicians have actually carried on in ways that has not only diminished the standing of our armed forces, but has also emboldened non-state actors to behave in the way we are seeing today. So you are beginning to see people who are actually attacking directly our security agencies, the armed forces inclusive. Now, where is the external input? The external input simply comes from those who have interests, vested interests, either in ensuring our country is not peaceful or in ensuring they stoke the status quo so they can sell solutions to us. Solutions could also be to the non-state actors.
But they're not really motivated. They're not really well paid. When I go to give analysis on the police staff college about use of technology, and I look at the agenda of the present government about 7-point agenda on this 80-page documents, and I picked on one on security architecture doctrines, which the government said, improve salaries of. I said, have they increased salaries? They say no, but where they have not paid us. So so give vitalizing of names of the use of technology. Have they done that? They'll tell you no funds, because you can't joke with the funds of the military. The politician knows the implication of it. But I told them, I wasn't telling I was have a one-on-one talk with them, but you tend to protect the rich at the expense of the poor ordinary Nigerians. And when it comes to the national, when it comes to budgeting, they slash your budget.
Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have opted to move out of the ECOWAS. That is not news. But what we're certain is that they have set January 29, 2025 to finally leave the regional body. So where does that leave the ECOWAS, and what is the place of Nigeria in this entire scenario?
We are the most populous, we have the biggest economy, but I've always argued, and I'm sure some of your viewers might remember, that when the then General Muhammadu Buhari was head of state, and he developed a foreign policy concept, we talked about the concept of concentric circles, which means our policy as Nigerians is, and responsibility of our government is the prosperity, the welfare, and the security of our people. But that those cannot be advanced, or those objectives will not be achieved, except in relation to the next ring in the concentric circle, which is our immediate neighbors. Then ECOWAS, then the African continent, then the rest of the world. Now, there have been other governments, including even the one that now former President Buhari led, and they have modified or tried to relate that principle of concentric circles to changing power relations in West Africa, in Africa, and the world. But in general, you have to pay attention to relationship with your neighbors.
Lake Chad has been identified as one of the driving forces behind the security breaches experienced in over a decade in Nigeria and the countries around here. And so, of course, recharging the Lake Chad was part of our discussions in the course of the year.
We must dredge all the 2 major rivers, including the Hadere Jamare, that go through Yobe, and also supplies Lake Chad, which has become smaller today, silted, essentially, so the flow is very small. So if we are able to dredge these channels, we will address the issue of flooding, increase the volume of flow in the channels, remove a lot of sand material that can be used in the construction industry, as well as actually as topsoil for agriculture use. And then, make navigability available, within these channels that we have dredged. Then we can go to, say, for example, Lokoja. And actually, we identify Lokoja confluence where the 2 rivers meet to be able to now build structures there that we can begin to harness this flow that we have now controlled.
While the lake, of course, has dried up by as much as 70% so far, there is the question around Nigeria's power supply, the generation, distribution, the entire power system, which is mainly hydro-based. And so, of course, in the course of the year, we looked at the national grid, we looked at the reforms in that sector, metering, and so much more.
The energy transition of Nigeria is mainly to do with enhanced gas utilization, because gas is the cleanest of the fossil fuels, gas utilization for power generation, for transportation, and also for industrial utilization. Then secondly, the ETP is also hinged on enhanced use of renewable energy. Renewable energy, solar, wind, biomass for electricity generation, as well as electric vehicles. Why electric vehicles is brought here, the sustainable way to use electric vehicles is when the batteries are charged from solar installations. So this area of the gas utilization, renewable energy utilization, electric vehicles, the manpower requirements to drive them is lacking.
Decentralization meant that private sector could generate electricity and sell, and federal government, in fact, all the governments, both federal, state, local governments, could generate electricity, but the transmission remained in federal government hands, and distribution was at that time unbundled to 11 distribution companies. Okay, eventually, with the emergence of ABA, the distribution companies became 12 distribution companies in Nigeria. But what has happened is that the new act, the new Electricity Act, didn't change who generate electricity. It basically allows everybody to still generate electricity. But it now allowed states to to participate in transmission if they should so choose. That's a very difficult process. So they can build transmission infrastructure above the normal distribution infrastructure. Also, it allowed states to participate in distribution, but that participation in distribution means that they would have to work with distribution companies, because the distribution companies own the networks in the place. But more importantly, this is where the states have some real new support, which is that they could set up their own regulatory commission. And some states have begun to do so.
The grid we have now, I'm talking about architecture now, not the capacity of the grid. The architecture of the grid is adequate as a model for Nigeria. What we need now is to reinforce it. Where you have single lines, add double lines. Where you have ring circuits, close the loops so that you can channel power through other routes when the given route is out, either on fault or probably for any other reason.
Where there is trust, there is confidence and growth in that economy. That is the role a meter play in this distribution network of a company. Because I can tell you, it's not about the last phase of distribution. There is meter between the GENCO and the TCL on which the distribution company are being built.
The impact of vandalism and other issues around the nation's critical infrastructure was also part of our conversations in the year 2024. And so, of course, one will be asking the questions around what are the budgetary provisions for the environment and what has Nigeria done in terms of vandalism and other issues around mining.
A colleague was just sharing with me that they took blood samples of 80 women between the ages of 15 to 55 within a community where gas flares happen, and they took their blood samples and found that they had hydrocarbons in the blood samples that were far higher than recommendations from WHO. And people are living in those communities. Results have also come back to say this has impacted. You now have women going into early menopause. You have children that are born with deformities. So you have all of those reproductive health issues and other issues, and nobody's held accountable.
There are a lot of things that people should do by themselves before government could do it. Government can build a drainage, but construct a drainage, but people may decide to fill it with sand or any other thing, just for them to make a bridge that they will use motorcycle to cross. So I think there are a lot of indiscriminate things that we are doing within ourselves that we need to, like you're saying, the policy. Of course, there are strong policies. There should be strong policies and action plans. Those action plans should include the stick and carrots.
I believe that everybody, you understand, whether you are mining or you are not mining, and that's where global rights come to my mind, you understand? Extractive, the women in extractives, you understand that everybody is doing one thing or the other to bring that sensitization to the minds of people, to let people know that when you leave mining unattended to, rather than place it can become a curse.
These scavengers also, no institution of government really regulates the activities. And that is a signal of governance failure. The essence of government is to ensure that the society operates under a particular norm. And that is why you have instruments and institutions of government. You have the police, you have the civil defense, you have other agencies of government whose responsibility is to ensure that these things are not done wrongly, that the public infrastructures are protected, because it's from the public fund that these infrastructures are provided. But you see these scavengers, oftentimes the dealers even fund them with instruments with which to break those metals.
Figures from the National Bureau of Statistics suggest that in the third quarter of the year 2024, Nigeria recorded a trade surplus of 5.81 trillion naira. But experts in that sector say that so much more can be achieved from the real sector.
An investor has no time to waste. An investor is confident on, so with or without you, they are okay. The investor also knows that you are not the only one that have what they are looking for. China is still looking for investor. America is still looking for investor. As we speak, is it now you want to give me encumbrances that I will not come? Do you know how long it takes for you to get a power license in Nigeria to do power, one of the most important sector in Nigeria? To take you nothing less than 2-3 years to get a license, because you're dealing with almost 8 different agencies of government. So I think that's what the approach should be. Government should decide which particular government should do that.
It seems like we don't understand the dynamics of change. Because for you to even be talking about wet season or dry season means that you're still living, in the past. Know, because climate change has altered everything. We thought we knew, about times and seasons. And this is why you now have those who understand this, promoting mitigation and adaptation strategies. It's become a very huge and major thing. And for us to be talking about the seasons of tomato and seasons of pepper is even more annoying.
Even when people leave the country, we believe that we can guide the process. So we don't want it to be illegal immigration. Let it be managed migration, so that the people are going there, they're able to connect to proper jobs, they're treated properly, they're able to repatriate funds to Nigeria. In fact, the jobs that we are going to help to connect people to, we want a situation where the funds actually come to their domiciliary account in Nigeria and they spend it with a card. So that way we're benefiting the economy. And you know what? They are getting the knowledge and the skills and the connections that they can use to also benefit Nigerians, and they can come back to the country later on to support. One other thing we're doing is that we have a strategy called the 1+2 strategy. And I'll explain what that is. The first one is one person going out. But for each person going out, we want a situation where Nigeria has it double, that's +2 benefit.
With millions of children out of school, we examined the policy direction towards inclusion.
We need to, in Nigeria, honor our own commitment as made in 2021 at the Global Education Summit to increase the budgetary allocation for education to at least 4% of GDP and 22.5% of budget. That is paramount. Our overall spend in this sector is woefully below par, and it's not going to get us to where we need to get to, especially given the numbers as you've painted earlier.
We can't have that conversation without also holding family level, families responsible, how we train our children responsible, what happens in the school system, what happens in the media, not us folding hands and hoping that that miracle is going to happen sometime.
Transparency, accountability, and justice.
Governors are borrowing money to do projects that has nothing to do with the life of the people. And at the end of the day, this money is wasted, embezzled, diverted, completely stolen. So at the same time, they are not also able to use their talent to be able to explore on how to improve on the revenue generation. They are waiting for Abuja, and they will come and collect the monthly allocation. You are an oil-producing country. You are bringing in, petroleum products from somewhere else. You have killed your own refineries so that you justify why you have to go and bring in pure.
If you look at the world geopolitically, and you look at the geopolitical tensions, around the world, you begin to see the need, to prioritize peace, to prioritize issues around dialogue, stakeholders consultation, negotiation, and peace-building activities that can make people, that can increase the confidence and trust of parties.
The creatives industry in Nigeria's quest to deepen intellectual property rights.
You look at Nigeria's cultural policy, it's obsolete. It's a policy that's been done almost about 3 to 4 decades ago. It has not been reviewed. And for a nation like Nigeria, there is a need for us to have a cultural policy that every state and local government can be able to adapt to.
A lot of people assume that having events is a waste of money, but what it does is, if you look at the economics of it, it creates temporary jobs, permanent jobs. I always say this from the perspective of when I worked as a photographer. Just because you decide to work, you can hire a lighting person, you can hire a makeup artist, you can hire a stylist. You're creating jobs just by deciding to do something in the creative space. And the beauty about the creative space is that you're creating something from nothing.
When people understand intellectual property and see the opportunities, the rewards that it offers them, then they tend to be more creative, or they tend to express that freer, or invest a lot more of their time and resources also in coming up with new products, new processes that make our societies better. So that's a driving force. But at the same time, there's also a cost to society.
Of course, the almighty Jack, we witnessed how the Supreme Court ended the debate around the joint accounts between the states and the local government councils, ensuring that every state in the country has properly elected local government councils. Were they perfect?
What I want Nigerians to focus on is, let's start working with the administrative and financial independence. What mechanisms can we put in place to ensure that those resources that are now going to the local governments are effectively utilized? What mechanism can we put in place to ensure that we build the capacity of the new local government chairmen, councillors, and all that to perform that mandate that they have now been given?
They are responsible for maintaining markets, they are responsible for numbering houses, they are responsible for providing basic health care, they are responsible for providing basic adults and even children education, they are responsible for providing slaughterhouses, maintaining public sewages, maintaining public conveniences. All of these things that make life easy for people are things that the central government, the federal government cannot handle all at the same time, then you ask yourself, how many of those things are actually functional in Nigeria?
And on that note, we end Retrospect 2024. Up next is Simplified East, and from there we head to the markets. As always, we have market details and more on our sister website, www.marketnigertv.com. We have all the details there for you. And don't forget to log on to our YouTube channel. It is Saban Media Services. And of course, leave your feedback, questions, comments, and suggestions to help us serve you better. Until we come your way again next year, have a beautiful holiday season, and God bless Nigeria.